Hello and welcome to Python Fundamentals. In this course, we learn the underpinning Python programming skills, preparing for our journey towards mastering the Django Framework and the Python programming language. This tutorial is part of a series of tutorials. You can find the link to the whole playlist in the video description. This tutorial is from our Python Programming Fundamentals for Django Developers course, which you can find and purchase on Udemy. You will find all the latest and updated tutorials, as well as resources and assessments to help accelerate your learning of the subject. The link to the course, which will always provide the best price, can be found in the video description. There may be many occasions when you need to specify a different data type onto a variable. This can be done through what is commonly known as casting. So let's take a look at how to define a specific data type onto a variable. In previous tutorials in this section of the course, we have started to drill down into specific Python data types. There are, of course, many more. In order for us to specify a data type, we need to recognize the keyword required for specific data types. So for example, a string, we would use str, an integer, int, a float, and a boolean. We can use these keywords and the associated built-in functions to cast different data types. Back in our code, let's go ahead and create a new file. I'm just going to create an example file, .py. Somewhere in our project, you may have a separate window or folder for this. I'm just using the project that we're working with throughout this course. Right, so with that done, let's go ahead and create a new variable. Let's call this name equals, and let's provide a name. Okay. So we have learned in previous tutorials that we can check which type of data this variable is storing. So we can do that by using the type built-in, pass the name into this built-in function type. That will then print out now the type of data that's being stored in this variable. So let's give this a go. Python 3 managed.py example. My terminal here is playing up. Let's do that again. Very strange. Python 3 example.py. There we go. So we return a string, str. Of course, that is the same if we were, for example, to place a whole number into our variable. So that would be the same case. So we're returning a string. So there are occasions when we want to potentially cast, and by that, I mean define the type of data that we want to work with. So let's imagine that we had this variable here called, let's just call it data. So sometimes when we're working with data, maybe from the database, the data isn't in the format that's required. So we need to maybe specify that type of data. So let's go ahead and now create a new variable. Let's just call this x for no particular reason. And we're going to x equals, and now we're going to cast this data. So at the moment, this data we know is a string type. So let's cast it into an integer. So we'll go ahead and use the keyword int. So we'll use the integer function here. And then this is a constructor function. And then we go ahead and type in the name of the variable. Now the existing data is a string. So now we're going to convert that into an integer. So I suppose in actual fact, we could just use data here. So let's go ahead and print this. And we can now see that we've changed the data into an integer. Now we need to remember the data type defines the values that can be defined as that particular data type. So if we were to change this to a string, So let's go back and change this back to a name. If we try to perform the same operation, then that would cause an error. We would retrieve or return, a value error. So the reason why that is, of course, is because we have an invalid literal for the integer here. So this name obviously isn't a number, so therefore it cannot be cast into an integer. So that is definitely something that we need to be careful of when we are casting or defining explicitly our data types. So by all means, familiarize yourself with the basic built-in types for some of the more common data types that you might be working with. Here we have integer, string, boolean, and float. And you can see here when we print them out, it returns the specific data type. By all means, if you would like to learn a little bit more, then go ahead to the documentation, the Python documentation here, the Python standard library built-in types, and you can explore some of these different types of built-in functions. So here we have the numeric types. Here we have iterator types, if you wanted to explore those, including string. So we have a text string sequence type, string, that we've seen. So you can read about the different components of this particular built-in function. I have been referring you to the documentation quite often, and that is not to try and speed up this process. Although there is a lot of information here that we haven't covered, the reason why I keep pointing you towards the documentation is that I'm not necessarily expecting you or thinking that you should read through this document from start to end. That's not necessarily how to interact with this documentation. If you are someone who would like to explore a little bit further, then potentially you look at different sections and you start reading through. But as a new developer, you might get bogged down very quickly with information that doesn't quite make sense. And then your journey then breaks off into different directions. And you spend a lot of time then trying to build up the underpinning knowledge before you fully and truly understand what is trying to be explained in some of the documentation. What I do recommend is when you have little bits of time, just to skim through and try and pick up information. I think as a new developer, you'll be better served understanding what is possible rather than knowing more about how to write code. And that might seem quite strange to think of it that way, because a lot of us would just focus on how to actually write the code. I think there's a lot of help and there's a lot of support online, and it's very easy to access how to write something. But there isn't necessarily a quick way of learning what is possible. Remember, programming is all about solving problems. So if you just learn the tools that are available to actually try and solve those problems, you'll be able to theoretically solve those problems utilizing tools and features or methods. And then when you actually get down to actually programming it, yes, you may not have that kind of skill straight away, but that's probably the easier thing to learn at this point. So do consider just skimming through, taking a look at different features that are available, and start building that library in your head. So when you are presented with a problem that you need to solve, then maybe you can start to draw upon that database in your mind, that library in your head, to try and come up with solutions to that particular problem. Whatever you do, don't overburden yourself with the quantity of information. And remember again that this is a marathon and not a sprint.